Happy Sunday to all of you out there. This is the fourth edition of the eDuck podcast. My name is Robbie Boydston. Once again, thank you to Major Oni and Mario Gadani of Heavy Heaters for the intro music. Sounds great once again. And as you'll notice, I'm rolling solo this week here. Eric was unable to record when I was down in Eugene yesterday, fell a little ill. So you're going to get a shorter podcast this week, but I figured that you guys should get at least something of a bit of a recap of the last week in Oregon athletics. Just to, in case you haven't been able to keep up or you're a fan of the podcast, which we know there's a few of you out there based on the views we're getting, so very much appreciated. Thank you very much sincerely for listening, and please, if you have any feedback on how to improve the show, or just you want to, kind of shoot out a comment here or there, they're much appreciated no matter what they are. And thank you thus far for listening to the show. It gives us a reason to keep recording every week and try to battle through illness. I know I was pretty sick earlier this week, and I'm just on the recovery trail. But thank you again, and let's get right into it. We're going to start with baseball. By the time you hear this, Game 3 will likely be just underway or happening, depending on when you're listening to it. Starts at 12 p.m. today, Game 3 of the Civil War Series between Oregon and Oregon State. The teams have split the first two games thus far. Friday night, Oregon took a 3-0 victory behind Tommy Thorpe, throwing a two hits over 8 innings, or only giving up 2 hits over 8 innings, striking out 7, walking 2. Put together a fine performance there as the Ducks got behind him and gave him a couple of insurance runs and made it a 3-0 victory. Oregon State returned the favor yesterday in a very, I don't know if vicious or just using the term big way would work better, but Oregon State did not let off the gas yesterday, especially in the 8th inning. It was a fun little pitcher's duel to start the game for the first about 5-6 innings between Cole Irvin, Oregon's reigning Pac-12 pitcher of the week, for his performance having a shutout against Ohio State during a doubleheader last week. This week, Andrew Moore, who I've got a sneaky suspicion will probably be the pitcher of the week this week, threw a complete game 2-hitter. The North Eugene product was pretty much unhittable. The Ducks hitters were unable to work counts against him. He was hitting his location very well. J.J. Altobelli expressed his kind of frustration after the game, saying that those are the toughest guys to hit. And you could definitely see it. Oregon was just not unable to make real good, solid contact. On the flip side of that, it seemed like Oregon State was able to get to Cole Irvin early by hitting the ball hard, but they just weren't able to find the right spots to get it to go down. Finally, in the 6th inning, Michael Conforto, after 2 hard-hit balls earlier in the game, finally hit it hard enough to where it snuck over the fence. Hits a solo home run with 2 outs in the 6th inning. Irvin himself even said that pitch and the pitch the next inning he gave to Ryan Barnes, that Barnes launched over the 375 mark just outside of the park, outside of Tyler Baumgartner's reach. That both those pitches were where they were supposed to be, where he wanted them to be. They just put a good whack on the ball, and he gave him credit for it. Irvin yesterday did admit after the game that he was pitching with a fever. He said it was pretty hard to get out of bed, and that he was actually kind of surprised at how well he was able to control his pitches yesterday. He did have pretty darn good control from where I was sitting. His breaking ball was working well. He was hitting his spot with his fastball, but Oregon State was just finally able to open the door up, and from there the floodgates opened. The Oregon bullpen struggled mightily, giving up 7 earned runs over the last 2 innings, including a disastrous 5-run 8th inning. It was a pretty ugly sight if you're an Oregon fan, especially with first place on the line in the Pac-12 standings. Oregon State, with the 9-0 victory, regained first place in the Pac-12 standings, making today's game very important for Duck fans. And, just the Ducks in general. And George Horton said that today's game is going to have a super regional type feel to it. I couldn't disagree with him there. It really is, especially since one of these teams likely will be hosting a super regional at some point if they're able to close out strong. And it it's going to be a huge game today, and I know JJ Altobelli explained that it's going to be a huge game. You can't hide away from it. Obviously, today's senior day as well for guys like Altobelli, Danny Pardini, Ryan Hambright will be one of those. There's 7 seniors going out today. So if you're an Oregon fan wanting to send off one of the first full classes of the new baseball program, this is going to be your last opportunity to do it. Obviously, it's going to add even more special atmosphere to the game for the Oregon side before they take off next week to go play Utah to finish out the season, and then they will await where they'll be sitting, whether or not they're a national seed and get to host a regional. I believe it's looking like that is pretty much a certainty, but obviously you got to finish out the season. So, but today, if Oregon wins, they will tie Oregon State up on top of the conference standings and will have taken the conference series. So that's a pretty big deal. And it'll be a fun game, fun atmosphere out at PK Park today. And if you're out there, go enjoy it. Hopefully the weather holds up. It was pretty overcast yesterday. We're going to move on now to quick mentions about softball. Softball has been pretty successful yesterday, wrapping up the Eugene Regional with a 3-0 win over Wisconsin. A big win for them. They won 3-0 against UNC as well, and also beat BYU. They relied heavily on their pitching and defense throughout the series. They struggled offensively. Jessica Moore was able to strike out 12 batters against BYU yesterday. She was able to be just pretty effective as well, as she and Sheridan Hawkins were able to combine for 7 strikeouts, and Janelle Lindvall and Sam Pappas both went deep for home runs to make it a 3-0 victory and to wrap up that regional. So Oregon will be playing one of those 4 teams, and with a chance to get to Oklahoma City and make it to the Women's College World Series. Huge deal for the program, obviously, with both teams missing out last year, both baseball and softball, and both trying to rectify that this year. Oregon's softball team could be the first to do that, and that would be a huge deal for the program. Earlier in the week, Moore picked up the Pac-12 Pitcher of the Year award. Meanwhile, head coach Mike White was named the Coach of the Year. So 2 great honors, really showing how far the softball team has been able to grow under White, and how they've been able to be able to build on this success. Obviously, you've got to like the chances with George Horton over there with coaching the baseball program. Mike White really doing a lot of great things with this softball program, that this growth is going to be able to be sustained as the years go on here, especially with the way they've been able to recruit as well and bring in solid players. I think this is a very big deal for the University of Oregon, especially given that in spring sports you usually think, when you think of those successful spring sports, you're thinking track. Now you can add baseball, you can add softball to the list. There's a lot more consistency with these programs now, and they're playing hard and they're getting rewarded for it. So a big deal out there, and congrats to the UO softball team there. We're going to get right back into baseball real quick here. Got to mention that Jimmy Sherfy's up for the Dick Hauser Award, which goes to the Player of the Year, one of the Player of the Year awards in college baseball. He's one of 5 Pac-12 players up there. Big deal, especially given he's had a very successful season. Obviously, he picked up his 20th save the other night against Oregon State, coming in with just pitched the 1 inning, and really he's become a dominant closer for Oregon over the past couple of seasons. I remember about 2 years ago, covering that team, that they had significant struggles closing out games, and they really couldn't find a consistent closer or really a consistent relief core that could close out games. There was a lot of switch ups. Guys would get inserted into places, kind of whatever was working at the time. I remember there were times where Scott McGuff would be out there closing. There were times where Kellen Moen would be out there closing. So there was a little, and it would just, the team was struggling. The chemistry wasn't good. We've talked about that before. Jimmy Sherfy comes in and he lives up to his Wild Thing moniker. The kind of joke in the press box is, is he going to hit three guys before he actually gets three strikeouts? He always comes into a game, just it seems like he's really amped up. He's got just a dirty slider, just a great tail on that thing, and a pretty good fastball. He does live up again to those. He's got a little bit of control issues at times, but if the bases are loaded, it almost seems like he thrives on that. It's almost like he needs to build up the pressure to close out a game sometimes. And I know it's aggravating for some Oregon fans who want to see a quick ninth hitting every once in a while, and he does put those together. But Sherfy, congratulations on being one of those players. They'll announce the award in June. And that's a pretty fun or a pretty big deal for the Oregon baseball program as well, especially considering the amount of awards they've been able to bring in this year with Offensive Player of the Weeks, pitchers of the week, and the way that the team's been able to really build up and get to 43 wins this season thus far, and likely going to sneak up there towards probably 45, 46 next week at Utah if they're able to take care of business. And who knows with what they're going to be able to do today against Oregon State in the finale. To get to some UO news that's a little bit not directly UO, but definitely something that people are going to like to hear. Kiko Alonso, who had his ups and downs in a Duck uniform, did sign a 4-year deal worth $4.3 million this week with Buffalo. 1.5 of it reportedly is, or around that, is going to be guaranteed. If you remember Kiko, he had a troublesome sophomore year at Oregon, was suspended from the team for various alcohol-related instances. He was heading down a bad path around the time that quite a few Ducks were. It seemed like there was a little bit of loss of control within the program. I remember, obviously, you remember Jeremiah Masoli and those incidences, and it seemed like the Ducks were in the paper for something bad almost every day, every couple of days, and Kiko at one point was a part of that, and now he was able to turn it around. Obviously, turned it around in a big way by becoming the Rose Bowl defensive MVP in that game. And his career stats at Oregon: 143 tackles, 6 interceptions, 3.5 sacks, and he was able to do that also without playing a one full year. Played in 36 games for Oregon, and he was quite an athlete, and was able to really turn it around. Unfortunately, I never really got to interview him after games. He wasn't the biggest, talk. He didn't talk a ton with the media. So, but for him to be able to turn that around, it'd be a success story, especially given what you've seen with Cliff Harris over the last couple of weeks, and the fact that Kiko's kind of becoming the opposite of that, and how he was able to pick himself back up and really turn it around and become a success story. And now he's going to be able to battle for a starting spot out there in Buffalo. And, he's got a chance to make his NFL career a little bit more successful than Harris did. And not to pick on Harris or anything, but just for comparison's sake, that's something you got to pay attention to. So let's dive into recruiting a little bit. Don't want to miss out on that. Obviously, I was able to talk to a couple of people this week. Want to get into an in-state kid really quick. Central Catholic defensive end Connor Humphreys. Humphreys, obviously local prospects. Oregon fans like to see those guys stick around. Thomas Tyner staying in-state and attending Oregon now is a huge deal. Obviously, when he had that brief moment where he decommitted for about 36 hours, it seemed like it put the state on, and that was pretty much all anybody could talk about. Humphreys does have an offer from Oregon State, does not have one from Oregon yet, though he has said that he was able to do a junior day at Oregon back in April, was able to talk to Helfrich, was able to talk to defensive line coach Ron Aiken, talked a little bit, not a ton. Aiken did make a visit to Central Catholic, though they weren't really able to visit there either. He was, it seems like Oregon's kind of on the wait and see approach right now with Humphreys, but Humphreys, 6'4", 265-pound defensive end, he seems like a guy that would be pretty well versed in Oregon's system. he said obviously being an in-state kid, and growing up watching the Civil War, he's wanted to participate in that. He could see himself staying in-state. It's not a guarantee, obviously, but he could see himself. He's got a lot of intention right now. 13 offers. Wisconsin and UCLA have been the two teams that have really pushed on him, and he's got a few more offers probably on the way here as we get further and further into the evaluation period. It's we're in the heart of it, and while we're on the subject, Oregon's Nike football training camp down in Eugene will be held on June 9th. Humphreys will be one of those participants, so hopefully I'll be able to get down there and put together some reports and talk to some athletes and get a feel for who's going to be the standouts there, and some kids coming out of that camp that Oregon coaches are going to like, obviously, with them being in their own backyard, and being able to assess those players right there in person. That's going to be a big deal and go a long way in recruiting. So, but Humphreys really is interested in Oregon. He says he's going to take a lot of unofficial visits this summer, pick one or two of his favorite schools to go take official visits, and then by early September or October, commit. He said he wanted to do that to try and get ready for preparing for not only next season, but to try and lead Central Catholic to a state championship game, which would be a big deal for that school out there in the Mount Hood Conference, especially given how many other tough leagues there are in Portland. Mount Hood usually isn't sending anybody to the state championship game, so for Central Catholic to make it, that would be a big deal for that school. A lot of good coaches over there that I've met, including they've got Anthony Newman, former Duck, over there as well, who Humphreys is coached and kind of he talks to. So that's something to keep in mind, that little connection there. Also, Humphreys is a U.S. Army All-American. He'll be playing in that game next January. Obviously, Thomas Tyner played in that game last season. It's reserved for what they perceive as the best of the best in high school football. And for Humphreys to be a kid out of Oregon to make that's a big deal. Obviously, we talk about a lot how they're obviously not a terrible area by any means, but sometimes overlooked, I believe, with the athletes just based on the location. And he said he Humphreys took some notes and studied and really watched these defensive guys from Central Catholic, like Brennan Scarlett, who's a linebacker who now goes to Cal, and then, of course, Alex Balducci, who's now at Oregon. And he said those guys really motivated him to become a U.S. Army All-American. And he wrote it down when he got the news and hung it up on his wall, and it's hanging up there as kind of a memento to show that hard work paid off. So, again, pay attention to Connor Humphreys as we get further on down the road. And we also got to talk to Adoree Jackson. Adoree Jackson is one of the top defensive backs in the nation right now, listed at number 2 by Scout. He's down from Gardena, California, and he's got over 25 offers already. Several schools are pushing for him, just to name a few. If you read the story, it's on educ.com. But USC, UCLA, Illinois, Michigan, Notre Dame, Florida State, Tennessee, all these guys are pursuing him very aggressively. Oregon's one of those schools that has offered him already. Scott Frost, actually, ironically, was the guy who told him Adoree does play on both sides of the ball, so it would be interesting. Maybe that's a telling sign that they want him. They want to look at him offensively as well. Not a lot of contact has been going on since then, but he did say that Coach Frost came in, let him know at school that they had offered him actually a little bit ago. Offered him back in March, and he did say that he is an exceptional track athlete. He is an Olympic hopeful in the long jump. And so given that Oregon, there are football players, and, you think D'Anthony Thomas, Kenyon Barner, guys like that who are participating. BJ Kelly right now, they are participating during track season. They're track athletes, and that, they're able to focus on that during the spring and put a lot of effort into that, as well as put a lot of effort into football as well, and be successful in both sports. You got to think that Oregon's an attractive option for a guy like Jackson. He did say that. He said, he's attracted to the speed. He can do football. He can run track. It's a great experience. He loves how they use their two-way athletes. Hopefully he's going to be making up a visit to the opening in Beaverton on the Nike campus. If that was the case, and if Oregon were to be showing a little bit more interest, wouldn't be surprised to see a visit there. But we'll see as that goes along. Obviously, the opening is a little bit farther down the road in July. So we'll move on from Mr. Jackson here and also talk to one of the newest Oregon offers. And we finally got a pronunciation on the last name. Leif Freck is his name. But the big offensive tackle from Peoria, Arizona, did talk with Eduk earlier this week, got his offer earlier this month, back on May 2nd. Steve Greatwood extended it to him. They said they liked his athleticism for his size, and that obviously he would be a good fit into the offense. If you watch him, again, I think I mentioned this before, but if you go back, watch his film, he's a good pole blocker, very athletic. I don't know, light on his feet is the perfect term for it, but in my, that's the way I see it. He's very quick for how big he is. Definitely you could see him fitting into an Oregon type system. 6'5", 260 pounds. He did say when he came up for the spring game, he got to talk to Kyle Long. Now this was the day after Long was drafted to Chicago to go play for the Bears now. And Long only spent a year at Oregon, as many of you know, and he was able to turn it around. He kind of had some trouble early on in his college career, and now is playing in the NFL. And he did talk about how good of a coach Steve Greatwood was, and how Oregon was a great place to play football. So Freck took that information, took it to heart. He did like. He told me why he liked Oregon. He loves the winning atmosphere they got there. How they're one of the top teams in the Pac-12 every year. He was kind of surprised at how many people showed up for a spring game. He didn't know football was that big out here, and that's something that I think a lot more fans from around the country are starting to realize about how Oregon really is kind of embracing this football culture more and more and more, especially with the success of Oregon, with Oregon State growing as well. You can't discount that. That's going to get even more people interested, especially since Oregon and Oregon State sometimes will be battling over the same athletes. You can see that happening probably a little bit more and more in the future, especially if Oregon State is able to keep on the path that they started last year by improving that program. Success, tenfold it seemed, and just coming out and having a very successful year for them. Their growth also attributes to a lot more attention for the state of Oregon, not just the University of Oregon. So, it's a good thing for both schools to be thriving, and that's going to get the attention of recruits as well. And so he's planning on making a decision in early August or late July. Says he's not sure if he's going to be able to stick to that fully, but he said he's still aiming for that. Probably will do that. He says he's only attending one camp as of right now at the University of Washington, but he did mention that the reason why he's doing that is because his coach really, really wants him to do it. It's kind of been pushing him to do it, so that he'll be participating at one up there, but doesn't really plan on doing any other camps. Just he's looking for a good offensive line, a good coach that's going to be committed to the university while he's there, and somewhere that's going to make him feel comfortable. He wants to go not only play football, but have a good academic background. Obviously, been hearing this more and more with a lot of these players. These guys really do want to get a good education, and they're looking at Oregon as one of those places where they can get that. And I believe he said he wanted to study criminal justice. I don't remember if Oregon offers criminal justice or not from when I was there, but hopefully they do if they want to get a shot at Leif Freck here. He's a pretty talented prospect and obviously it's easy to see why Oregon did offer him. And real quickly before I get out of here real quick, just want to mention real quick, obviously a lot of you have probably heard already of tennis player Alex Ravello's untimely passing. UO student died diving into the portion of the McKenzie River, was unable to get back up. Unfortunately, he was in an area where it was hard to get help, no cell service, and just a very unfortunate accident. He went to nearby Cleveland High from where I'm recording right now. I'm up against Milwaukee High School. Cleveland, the school that my grandparents went to. It's 10 minutes away, and it's home to, the Portland area is home to quite a few pretty good tennis players. I knew a couple growing up, and Ravello able to put together a 50-0 singles record in high school, 65-2 in the Pacific Northwest overall. That's an impressive, very, very impressive record. Obviously, from what I've read, I didn't know him personally or anything like that. From what I've read, he was just a stand-up guy and a guy that one of those ones you don't want to lose. And it's never good to lose anyone young. It's never good to see that happen. Especially, you think of his family, you think of all of his, the friends and the people around him and the lives that he was able to touch, and he was able to do that in such a short amount of time. And there's those reminders that life is fragile, but it's still very untimely and very sad to see this. And having been at Oregon, when you do see students, or when you hear of the experience, when you experience that with students dying, you really do see how close the community comes together. That it's a student campus full of 20,000 kids, and you get to see how many people really come together and show support for one another and help each other try to get through this in a nice gesture by the University of Oregon athletic teams. The remaining teams will be wearing a patch with his initials on it for the rest of the season. And so, Alex will not be forgotten. So I believe I'm going to right there wrap it up. And again, thank you for listening. You got about half of the normal podcast you would get, which makes sense because there's about half the team here today. So once again, Eric, hope you're doing good. He'll be back next week. If you're listening to this now, we're at 11:03, so you got an hour until first pitch. I believe the game is on television on the Pac-12 networks if you've got it. If you don't, go find a bar that has the Pac-12 networks that will be offering it, and go enjoy your day. Have a great Sunday. I'm going to try and keep recovering here, and hope all of you are doing well. We'll let you go and listen to a little bit of Major Oni and Mario Gadini's Heavy Heaters beats. And thank you once again for eDuck.com. This is Robbie Boydston, and I will talk to you all next week.